no question that trade can be an act of war, and I think it's led to bad things. Just the attitudes it's brought out in the United States. I mean, we should be looking to trade with the rest of the world, and we should do what we do best, and they should do what they do best. With 8 countries with nuclear weapons, including a few that are what I would call quite unstable, I do not think it's a great idea to try and design a world where a few countries say, ha, 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 we've won, and other countries are envious.
As I record this video, the Berkshire Hathaway annual shareholders meeting is underway in Omaha, Nebraska, and Warren Buffett has just finished making his harshest and most direct, unambiguous criticism yet of Donald Trump's tariff policy. Now, I'm going to get into what Buffett said in just a minute, but before I do that, I just want to give some background information. Warren Buffett has been a longtime critic of Donald Trump's tariff policy. He was critical in Donald Trump's first term, and he's critical today. However, his commentary on Trump's tariffs has, for the most part, been pretty indirect. He's never named Trump by name. He's made statements about why tariffs in general are bad, but he hasn't really said anything that would indicate he is personally hostile to Donald Trump. Today at the Berkshire Hathaway shareholders meeting, that changed. Now, he still didn't mention Trump by name. However, he made 3 of his sharpest and most pointed criticisms yet of the tariff policy. Those were, first, that tariffs are an act of war. Second, that the U.S. should be trading with other countries. And third, that these tariffs, or perhaps even more importantly, Donald Trump's demeanor when announcing them, is instilling a bad attitude into Americans. So let me just go through these one by one. So first, the fact that tariffs are an act of war. That might sound a little melodramatic, but think about it. How many times have you heard of a courtroom fight between 2 people described as a battle? Economic warfare may not involve guns and bombs, but it is a form of warfare, and we often use terms like battle and war to describe legal drama. Same with tariffs. It's a type of nonviolent conflict that, furthermore, risks spilling into violent conflict if it persists over a long enough period of time and makes the other party irritable enough. Throughout history, wars have frequently been preceded by things like tariffs and trade sanctions. Before World War II broke out, the Allied and Axis countries were putting all kinds of tariffs and sanctions on one another. And if you wanted an example of how these types of measures can spill out into war, what happens when a country refuses to trade vital national security equipment with another country, let's say arms or rare earth minerals, which China stopped shipping to the United States after Trump put his 145% tariff on that country? Economic war can turn into physical war, and so yes, Buffett is right. Tariffs are indeed an act of war to some extent. Second, the fact that the U.S. should be trading with other countries. Well, first off, other countries have a lot of things that the U.S. doesn't have and does need. To go back to the rare earth example, the U.S. does not have a lot of heavy industry that is required to turn rare earth minerals into usable forms. This is why China has a near monopoly on certain rare earth minerals, especially rare earth magnets. It's not that it's the only country that has the raw material, but these materials need to be processed quite a bit, and only China really has the heavy industry needed to do so. So China and the U.S. should be trading. China needs soybeans and other things. The U.S. needs rare earth, and its consumers want cheaper products than can be made in the United States, the types of things that are sold on Temu and other platforms. So yes, the U.S. should be trading with other countries, including China. Third and finally, the negative cultural attitude that Donald Trump risks instilling in Americans. Now, what he's referring to here is this kind of ha ha ha, I got mine, sucks to be you attitude. Now, if you're a Democrat-leaning American, you might think, well, I certainly don't go around the world talking like that. But if you're on X frequently, Trump supporters actually do talk like that, saying things like other countries need to do what they're told, other countries need to stay in their place. those kinds of things. This is an egotistical attitude that normally we expect a grown adult human being to be past, to have grown past. But Donald Trump is not past it. He has a huge ego. He insults other countries all the time, talking about how they're kissing his ass. And now he's trying to negotiate with these countries who he insulted by saying that they were kissing his ass. And they're coming back to him and saying, we're not taking your deal. Japan, for example, it has been negotiating with the U.S. The U.S. is demanding that it choose between trade with the U.S. and trade with China. And surprise, surprise, Japan is refusing to go exclusive with the U.S. Now, why is that? How could that be? You know, Japan has been known as a U.S. lapdog all these years. Well, being insulting and caustic enough can at times have real policy impacts, especially when it comes to things like trade policy. You know, diplomats and world leaders and these types of people, they're very concerned about maintaining face. They want to project a strong image to their people. And when Donald Trump goes around at Republican conventions saying that these nations' leaders kissed his ass, well, if they don't play hardball on trade after that, they're just going to look to their people like what Donald Trump said about them being a bunch of ass kissers was correct. So it might well be that the reason that Japan refused to choose between trading with the United States and trading with China is because it had been insulted. Now, I don't mean to say that that's the whole picture. Obviously, the fact that Japan has way more trade with China than with the U.S. is a big part of it, too. But who knows? It might have contributed. People generally don't like being insulted. People very frequently will refuse to patronize restaurants that they had been insulted by the waitstaff at. And the same thing happens, arguably to a greater extent, in international relations. Countries, if they are insulted badly enough, may take up a harsher stance on trade than they would have otherwise, simply because they need to look strong after having been insulted with impunity by a president of the United States. And I just want to make one final point. This doesn't directly relate to what Buffett said, but as to the wisdom of tariffs in general. Well, you know, the U.S. could probably survive having just a 10% flat tariff rate on all countries in the world. I don't think it needs one or anything. But these constantly changing tariffs, you need to realize Donald Trump didn't just impose tariffs on April 2nd and leave them there. He imposed them, then he backed off on all except for China, then he raised the tariffs on China, and then he said that countries have to negotiate, and if they give him something, they'll get relief from the tariffs. But as of right now, in 90 days, the tariffs, or in 90 days from April 2nd, I should say, the tariffs are set to go into effect. These policies are changing all the time, and the problem with that is it creates economic uncertainty. So here's a little hypothetical to help you visualize how uncertainty creates economic costs and risk. Let's say that 1 week ago, you were operating in a country. We'll call it basic land. And in that country, there is a low tariff policy. It has a 0% tariff on country A, where you import all of the supplies you need from, and a 20% tariff rate on country B. So you're probably not dealing with country B. And let's also say that country B makes the same goods at the same price, not counting the tariff as country A. So you're probably just importing happily from country A. But let's say today a crazy, wacky leader gets elected in your country, and he has a big bone to pick with the leader of country A. Let's say that he insulted his mother or something like that. And as a result of that, he decides to impose a very steep 100% tariff on country A. At the same time, he has some fairly smart advisors who are telling him, look, you could tank the economy and make people way poorer by doing this. And the leader of country A is constantly having a little tug of war happening inside himself between his own inclinations and the better counsel of his advisors. So what ends up happening is that in country A, the tariff rate goes from 10% one day to 100 the next, and it just keeps going back and forth, 10% one day, 100 the next. And in this scenario, even though country B has a 20% tariff, you're better off going with country B now, because country A, well, first of all, 10% one day and 100% the next will average out to 55% over the long term, which is higher than 20%. But secondly, country A, the trade relationship between country A and your country is now subject to tremendous uncertainty. So, compared to the pre-crazy leader situation, where you had just free trade between you and country A, I mean, that you're now taking extra costs. That 20% tariff is a cost, and also doing capital expenditures to build property, plant, and equipment in country B is also a massive cost. But you just can't afford to deal with country A anymore because your country's trade relationship with it is subject to such extreme risk and uncertainty. And imagine my shock, things like this are already happening. Shortly after Donald Trump's April 2nd tariff announcement, Tim Cook announced that he would be shifting the manufacturing of all iPhones sold in the US from China to India over a period of years. Yes, India, not the US. Apple is not yet prepared to manufacture in the US and have iPhone prices shoot up to $3,000 for the base model, but it is getting the message about tariffs enough to shift production somewhere else, and it's going from China to India. So what do you think about all this? Is Warren Buffett right about Trump's tariffs? Should the tariffs come down? Should the US have tariffs, but lower ones than what Trump has proposed so far? Leave a comment in the box down below. And if you like the video, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell button. And as always, happy saving.